This is Ethan, and I'm here with Dave, and together we are Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, episode 93-inch.
On this week's episode, we conclude our interview with legendary guitarist Richard Bennett, known for decades of touring and recording with Neil Diamond and Mark Knopfler, plus early work with Weird Al. Oh yeah, he's also Bermuda's brother.
It's Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
It's a podcast about Weird Al.
It's Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
Seriously, the whole podcast is about Weird Al.
Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
You don't have to listen, but we're glad you are.
Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
Now, a lot of people were amazed to learn last week that Richard Bennett is none other than John Bermuda Schwartz's brother.
You know, I thought it was common knowledge that people knew that Richard and Bermuda were brothers. But then again, you know, there is a slight chance that not all of our listeners have the family trees of all the Weird Al's band members printed out on their bed sheets like we do.
Yeah, you're right. Probably a few of them have them printed on their shower curtains instead.
Now it all makes perfect sense.
We cannot wait for you to hear the rest of this awesome interview coming up this episode.
Ethan, both you and I got something really cool in the mail this week. We got our copies of Susan McNabb's brand new book, The Opposite of Famous, a Hollywood Memoir.
Yes, it is awesome. I haven't read it yet, but just looking at it, I know that it's awesome.
I cannot wait to dive into this book and find out all about Susan's amazing Hollywood career. If you have not picked up the book yet, you can do so over on Amazon.com. It's available on both Kindle and in paperback formats.
And we realized something pretty cool. So last week we had both Richard Bennett and Susan McNabb on the show, and they both have worked with Billy Joel and Weird Al.
Susan was in Billy Joel's music video for We Didn't Start the Fire, and Richard worked with Billy on 3 studio albums, including the iconic Piano Man album.
And the similarities don't stop there. Both of them have been pictured with facial hair.
Of course, what Ethan's talking about is that Susan played the lead Robert Palmer girl in Weird Al's UHF music video and wore a mustache for that, and Richard wears a full beard and mustache combo.
And the coincidences don't end there. Billy Joel and Weird Al both had mustaches, too, early in their careers, and just like Susan, they eventually shaved them off.
So that noise can only mean one thing. We have a message on our 347 Spatula Hotline. The 347 Spatula Hotline, the official hotline of Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, is sponsored by Angel Valenzuela and David Cash, 2 amazing Weird Al fans and podcast supporters.
Let's take a listen. Maybe a past guest called in to tell us how they're doing.
Hey, Dave and Ethan. This is Jason Altshaw. I was your guest on episode 47-inch, and congrats on coming close to 5% of your 2,000-inch goal. Anyhow, on your last episode, you guys mentioned that you like hearing from past guests, so I figured I'd call and check in. And I'm good. Thanks. I got 2 weeks of vacation time coming. I'm thinking of going out to Darwin. So that's it. Yeah, thanks, guys. Hope you're good.
Oh, that's so cool, Jason, that you want to visit Darwin, Minnesota for your vacation. Have we got just the sponsor ad for you? As you pack your car with pickled wieners and Spider-Man comics for your long road trip to Darwin, Minnesota, be sure to swing by Troy, New York on your way there to pick up some vegan Mexican food.
This week's episode is brought to you in part by vegan Mexican restaurant Burrito in Troy, New York, home of the 2-pound double wrapped in the quesadilla Burrito. Come on down to Burrito and Burrito, your Burrito. Find them at burritosquared.com and at Burrito Squared on Instagram. And remember, not every burrito is a burrito, but every burrito can be burritoed.
Well, Jason, I hope you enjoy your road trip, and please say hi to Bernie from both of us.
Oh, goody. We have another voicemail on the 347 Spatula Hotline. Let's see who it is.
Hey, podcast world. It's Joe Jaffa here, friendly podcast listener and Patreon supporter. I'm calling because last night I got the pleasure of drinking a can of the new Dare to Be Stupid beer, courtesy of Adrian Vasquez. And I want to say it's pretty sneaking majestic. It's perfect. It's Just the right amount of hops thrown in there, not too hoppy as other IPAs might get, but it's great. Can't recommend it enough if you could get your hands on it, and if you're over 21. Because if you're not, don't drink yet. Not for you. Great. Thanks so much, guys. Keep the great podcast episodes coming. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Wow, Joe, thank you so much for the call. I am so jealous that you tried the Dare to be Stupid beer from Icarus Brewing. I cannot wait to give that a try.
And I cannot wait to cry into one of them.
Now, while we're on the subject of stuff and fans, Dave, I think we've got a Melanie situation on our hands.
A Melanie situation? You mean like,
That's exactly what I mean.
Oh no, what happened? Did someone tattoo our names across their forehead or give mohawks to our cats?
No, although that would be pretty cool, actually. I mean, I wonder who will be the first to get a Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast tattoo.
Well, probably the same person who would give a mohawk to our cats. Anyway, what happened?
Oh, yeah, right. Okay, so we got an email from someone, this crazy drawing, and they drew me, and I'm dead, and I'm ripped my beating heart out, and then you're standing there looking at me with hearts in your eyes.
Oh, yeah, that was sent by our great listener, Chris Sear.
Wait, it was?
Yeah, Chris sent us tons of fun drawings over the last year or two.
Oh, wow.
Well, thank you for all your fun artwork and support of the podcast, Chris.
And, thanks for this one, too.
Let's check out This Week in Weird Al News.
Now, Dave, as you know, today is February 10th, 2021. And you know what that means? It's Al and Suzanne Yankovic's 20th wedding anniversary.
And it is a big week in the Yankovic household because tomorrow, February 11th, is their daughter Nina's birthday as well.
From all of us here at Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, happy 20th anniversary, Al and Suzanne Yankovic, and happy birthday, Nina.
February 10th is also the 20th anniversary of Joel Miller's key role of best man at Al and Suzanne Yankovic's wedding.
Now, last week on episode 92-inch, we announced that Joel Miller himself will be our guest for episode 100-inch. We are so excited to talk to him about his important role in Al and Suzanne's wedding.
We are telling you this all now, so when episode 100-inch comes around, you are not surprised that Joel and Al are friends. We do not want any more life-altering bombshells for our listeners. You know, like Richard and Bermuda being brothers.
We apologize for any distress that may have caused you. So, Dave, what did you do to celebrate this past Sunday?
Well, you know, probably the same thing everyone else in America was doing.
Oh, great! Yeah, me too. So, how did you watch it? You know, the film UHF 27 times in a row?
Well, you have to stagger it. First you start on the TV, then you get one going on the laptop, I project one up on my wall. You know, it's really tough to fit all 27 screenings in, but it's tradition, so that makes it okay.
Nice work, Dave. Now, for any non-Americans who are confused, Sunday was February 7th, or 2/7, so it's 27 Day.
Or, as our European friends call it, 72 Day.
Now, a couple of weeks ago on episode 91-inch, we got to talk to our buddy J.W. Halford all about his awesome short film, Ghost Dogs, that premiered at Sundance Film Festival. And there is some really exciting brand new merchandise if you head over to ghostdogs.net.
They just added a sticker, a pin, and a poster, and everything has free shipping.
Plus, they still have all those awesome t-shirts available, plus information to get the official Ghost Dogs beer.
Ooh, we need to get some official Ghost Dogs beer for Joe Jaffa to review next.
Great idea.
Don't forget, 2-time Grammy-nominated podcast theme songwriter and accomplished guitar player Jim Kimo West's new single, a slack key cover of Paul Simon's Feeling Groovy, drops this Friday. For more information, head on over to jimkimowest.com.
On last week's episode, we aired part 1 of our interview with legendary guitarist Richard Bennett. We learned all about Richard growing up with Bermuda as his younger brother, as well as his work with Weird Al on his first album demos, and the Placebo EP.
This week, we will dive into Richard's amazing career, his studio work and solo albums, and his work with Neil Diamond and Mark Knopfler. Plus, we finally find out the story behind his infamous Bopcat nickname. Let's pick up the interview already in progress.
I'm curious on the Placebo EP, of course, the one that's $400 on Discogs. You are credited as Bopcat Bennett. What was the origin of that name, Bopcat?
Yeah. I was, just in a rockabilly.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd always loved rockabilly, and I was old enough to where I actually lived through it the first time, but there was sort of a rockabilly revival going on. In large part due to the Stray Cats in England, and it kind of started there and then seeped back over into the States. So that was my rockabilly name.
So that wasn't just for that recording. You were using that name elsewhere?
No, not really. Somehow Al got hold of it, and that may have been through John or something. But that's how I ended up being that on the Bopcat. I stopped that.
You need to bring it back. Bobcat's great.
Well, looking back on it now, at almost 70, I'm certainly no longer Bopcat. But anyway, you go through these things, don't you?
One thing that I was really surprised about, and I talked about this to Dave, and Dave's like, oh yeah, I've known that for a long time, but this was new to me. When I was listening to I'll Be Mellow When I'm Dead, right before your guitar solo, Al goes, "Ow, Bopcat!" And I've never heard that.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten about that. I have to go back and listen to that, but now that you mention it, yeah, that's right, I remember that. Obviously, it was being thrown around,
right?
Yeah, not many people know. But anyway, there you go. There's the not so interesting story of Bopcat.
Yeah.
Sounds like Weird Al was trying to get that nickname to stick for you.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know what else to say about all of that. It's just something. A name I had at the time.
Yeah.
Kind of a self-inflicted gunshot wound of a nickname. But
the one thing I found very interesting is many years later, you and Bermuda ended up on the same release, this seemingly kind of out there release in Germany called 30 Years Bear Family Records.
Oh, right.
You did the song Big Bear Two-Step Instrumental, and John was performing on Ripmaster's song Bare Knuckle Piano. What can you tell us about 30 Years Bear Family Records?
I mean, first off, Bear Family is the do-all and end-all of reissue labels, I think. And it started out in Germany. It's a guy named Richard Weitze, and he started out as a bootlegger, putting out vinyl LPs pre-CD,
right?
Late 70s, and whenever I was in Europe, Germany or Holland, I would always seek out these, and it wasn't called Bear Family then; it was called CCL. Classic Country Legacy or something like that. But I'd seek out these vinyl records and buy them, because I was always into old hillbilly music, country music of the 40s and 50s. And so I always loved these albums, and then it morphed into becoming a legitimate concern where he was licensing things legitimately and getting to original masters to reissue stuff as opposed to stuff out of his record collection. Then it became Bear Family. And at some point in the late 80s or something, I somehow became in contact with him, or he got in contact with me, because I had a stash of demos, publishing demos, by Johnny Horton, who I was and still am a huge fan of. Mm-hmm. And I had these publishing demos through a friend of mine who worked at the publishing company that had acquired these Johnny Horton demos. The publishing company that Horton used to write for, the Lawrence Welk Publishing Company, had acquired American music that Horton was writing for in the early 50s. So anyway, a friend of mine was heading up the Welk Publishing Company, and I just on a flyer asked him if he had any Johnny Horton demos around. So I ended up with 2 reel-to-reel tapes of these Johnny Horton demos. And somehow Richard Weitze had found out about it and contacted me, about hearing them and so on and so. Anyway, he and I hit it off really well, and we became friends.
Oh, cool.
And I just was kind of part of the Bear family after that, and on to do transfer work for Richard, for the label. And I would just do this as a favor for him. A lot of times he'd be dealing with 3-track tapes. And he was 90% deaf in one ear. So wisely, he didn't trust himself to do these transfers, 3-track to 2-track stereo transfers. And he was always real suspicious of outside engineers and stuff. So he would contact me of any stuff that was here in Nashville, that emanated from Nashville, to just go in and do the transfer for him. And it didn't involve anything. These things were so well recorded and well balanced that you could just take a ruler and slide the 3 faders up, and it was a mix. You just had to make sure that things were in phase, and that's all you had to do. And then you transfer the 3 tracks down to a stereo mix, and which is what they did back then anyway. But I learned what 3-track was about, which when I started recording, 3-track was already gone, and we were using 4-track, and 8-track had already begun to come in. So I never really understood 3-track, but for the most part, 3-track was the bass and drums on one side, usually the right side, and everything else on the left side except the vocal. And the vocal was right up the middle. And that sounds like a weird balance, but man, after about 10 seconds you go, I completely get it. I love it.
Wow.
And that's why those vocals always sat so well in the record, that they were that loud. They just had a lot of geography, a lot of space to be and to live, within the record. And so anyway, I used to do a lot of stuff like that for Richard, and he and I are still friends. And so anyway, when Richard would do a box set every 5 years. I think he did a 25-year anniversary that I think I contributed something to on, and a 30 and a 5. And so anyway, it's a long-winded answer. I'm sorry, but that's how I ended up on the Bear Family thing. And I think Richard had reissued some of Rick Masters' stuff over the years.
Oh, okay.
I think. So anyway, that's how John would have ended up with Rip on there.
So it's kind of a coincidence, it sounds like.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we didn't go into it together. Obviously, we were playing on different things, but ended up on the box together. Yeah.
Cool.
I'm curious how you got your start with Neil Diamond.
Well, that's another long-winded story, but I was working with a rhythm section in Hollywood a lot, doing a lot of recording with this particular rhythm section, and the drummer got a call. And Neil was on Neil's band. They needed a new drummer, for whatever reason. I don't know why. And Dennis St. John, who's the drummer I was working with a lot at that period, got the call. And he kept turning it down. He didn't want to leave town because he was kind of getting established in studio work, and that's what he came. He came from Atlanta, from doing a lot of recording in Atlanta, which at that time was still a recording center. But he came to L.A. to establish himself as a session musician there. And that was beginning to happen, and he didn't really want to go out. But they kept calling him, and this went on for a couple of months, it seems like. And finally, I think Neil called him personally and kind of twisted his arm a little bit. So he went out for a weekend and came back and was converted. He absolutely loved Neil and the whole thing, and agreed to go with Neil's, be playing Neil's band. And at that time, Neil was only doing weekends. He'd go out, a Friday afternoon or Friday morning and play Friday, Saturday, Sunday somewhere, and either catch a red-eye back Sunday night if he could, or early Monday morning. So basically, that left the week free for Dennis to do his session work. And that went on for a few months, and Neil and Dennis hit it off well. Dennis caught Neil's ear and said he needed a better band, and that Dennis, was working with this group of studio musicians and blah, blah, blah. And anyway, that all transpired. And frankly, we never even, we never auditioned, per se. It just was a done deal. It was a done deal.
Wow.
And, we met with Neil, I think at the end of 1970, somewhere in the winter of 1970, and began rehearsals in the beginning of 1971, and then started going out and gigging straight away. So anyway, that was a wonderful thing. I mean, I think our first, or one of our first shows with Neil was like the Salt Palace in Salt Lake City, for 18 or 20,000 people. Holy cow! Wow. I couldn't, my knees were shaking. I was just still pretty fresh out of Phoenix at that point.
Yeah.
And I'd been doing studio work for a few years, but that was a different deal altogether. And Neil's another one who, to his credit, like Al, knew when something was happening, not to tamper with it, to let it evolve and to let it grow and to give it room to grow and watch it grow, and help it grow. And, so that band remained incredibly static for a long time, to Neil's credit. There were additions made to it, but the basic band rhythm section stayed the same for a long time. I was the only idiot to leave, to voluntarily.
Oh, no.
And it's only because I just, I don't know, I just felt I had a few other things I wanted to do,
Mm-hmm.
and I was kind of in my mid-30s at that point, and I knew if I didn't break away from it, as painful as it was, I didn't want to leave because it was just too good. But
right.
I knew if I didn't leave at that point that I wouldn't do anything else. I'd still be there. And most of the people stayed there they had 40+ year careers there.
Yeah.
And I just had a few other things I wanted to try. So anyway, that's why I left.
I mean, you stay with him for 17 years. That's a career in itself. Just 17
Yeah.
years is not like just, I was with him for a couple of years. That's a long time to be with anybody.
Yeah.
It was a long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was chafing at the bit just a little bit, and I felt that was enough time. I needed to move on and do a few other things. I wanted to produce records. I'd begun commuting to Nashville and playing on projects there, and I liked the way that felt. And really saw my future as being a record producer more than being a musician at that point. So, we moved to Nashville with that for me in mind. And that happened, but also the playing continued too. My session work got very busy here. And I stayed on with Neil for a couple of more years through that. We came here in 1985. And, I got busy, and I got busy producing records. And the way things worked then was artists were on a release schedule. You had it was like a merry-go-round, really. But artists had to get an album out, I don't know, a couple of times a year, or at least once a year. And that was already scheduled. That was already scheduled before the recording was booked. And, that was in place. And when you signed on to produce an album, that release date was in your contract. And, while it was while the turn-in date was flexible a little bit, short of an act of God or the artist getting sick or, something major happening, you kind of had to stick to your turn-in date, and everything was based on that. It was usually an 8-week window between turning the album in and manufacturing and releasing. And if you didn't meet your turn-in date, as I say, by a little bit here or there, ultimately the producer was responsible for that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And you were responsible financially for it.
Right.
So anyway, that worked then, and it worked okay. It was fine. But a couple of times, what had happened was I was contracted to produce an album, and Neil's office had called in the midst of it and saying, asking me to be out in L.A. At such a date for a couple of weeks rehearsal, and then we'll go on the road for 3 weeks. And I didn't have that flexibility. Contractually, I didn't.
Right.
And so I explained that, and Neil was very good about that. And they got a sub for me, a fellow named Hadley Hawkinsmith, great guitar player in L.A., who had actually subbed on that gig before. Once for me, and I think once for the other guitar player. And so Hadley came in and took my spot on that tour. And then I think it happened a second time as well. And it just, I never was fired from Neil or by Neil, and I never officially quit. It just kind of morphed into being Hadley's gig.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I liked that. I was comfortable with that. So I didn't want to be fired, and I didn't want to quit.
So you're still in the band.
I know. Well, yeah. Funnily enough, I ended up going back in 2017 for the 50th anniversary tour.
Wow.
But that's another story. Another story altogether. Anyway, after a couple of tours, it just evolved into Hadley's job. And then I was based full-time here in Nashville, producing and recording. Yeah. And that, of course, about 8 years later led to my association with Mark Knopfler. And so that was, things all always work out, or usually work out the way they're supposed to.
Yeah, looking at this list of folks you've recorded with and performed with and toured with, I mean, obviously we mentioned Neil Diamond, Mark Knopfler, Billy Joel, Barbra Streisand, Ringo Starr, the Partridge Family. I mean, was that just through some of this session work, or what led into that?
Yeah, that was all through doing record dates, and that's it. If you're fortunate enough to do that kind of work and get into session work, particularly there in L.A. at that time, you just it's an embarrassment of riches that you walk into every day. Not always, but you were exposed to all kinds of great artists that you work with, and even people that you didn't appreciate at the time. I don't know. I used to stand up on sessions with people like Andy Williams and Peggy Lee and Johnny Mathis and people like that.
Mm-hmm.
That at the time, I was young and arrogant, and I just wanting to play rock and roll. And you think, oh God, these old middle of the road guys. God, I look back on it now, and they're the highlights of some of the recording I did. I'm so proud to have worked with people of that caliber.
Yeah.
They were great. There was a reason they were stars. And yeah, they weren't rock and roll, but that doesn't matter. They were great.
Right.
Right, yeah.
I remember I did 3 albums with Johnny Mathis, and I remember being on the floor. They were live dates, and putting the headphones on and doing the rundowns of the tunes, before we actually recorded them, and hearing that voice in my headphones. It was like playing to a finished record already. People who were that good.
Yeah.
And that recognizable. And Brenda Lee was the same way. I did an album with Brenda Lee in the mid-'80s. And I was still living in L.A. at the time, but was commuting to Nashville to play on projects. And this was one of them. And I remember putting the phones on and doing the tracks and thinking, God, there she is. And she was together, man. She'd be waiting for us to get it together. She had her together. And it was like a finished record. It's an honor to play with those people.
Yeah.
But anyway, that all came about because I was just happened to be one of the on-call studio guys at that time.
Wow.
You just get a call. You just get calls.
Cool.
And really, yeah, it's incredible. I look back on it now. It's just, at the time, it's not that you take it for granted necessarily, but you're just real busy at the time, and you can't always come up for air and assess things. You know what I mean? So you're just working. You're just doing 2 and 3 sessions a day and putting one foot in front of the other. And it's only after the fact that you can look back on it. You go, holy Christmas, man. I was so lucky. All of us were so lucky. And that's, of course, what led to the Knopfler thing. It was just a session call. And,
wow.
Yeah, a call for 3 days worth of sessions. And, that led to a 25, 26-year association.
Were you hesitant to go back on tour, once you started working with Knopfler after, I guess almost some of your concerns back when you were with Neil Diamond, or was it just a different time in your life and you were ready to go back out on the road like that?
Yeah. Yes, it was a different time of my life, and I'd been off the road for about 8 years, and in those 8 years, produced a lot of records and continued to play on a lot of records, and realized that I guess I didn't really want to be a record producer after all. I always loved making the records, but all of the other attendant things with it, the business end of it, and all of the other stuff, I hated, and I wasn't very good at. And also, I always felt I was in an adversarial role with the label. I always felt it was the artist and me against the label.
Right.
And I hated that. And looking back on it now from 25 years now, I was wrong. I wasn't, I should have never been that way. You should be in cahoots to some degree with the label. You stick up for what you need to stick up for. But I always felt an adversarial relationship there. Anyway, that's not the way to produce records. Well, not in this, not in Nashville anyway. It wasn't.
Right.
And so anyway, having done that for 8 or 10 years, I realized that I was not cut out for that, and also that I really missed being in a band and what that felt like, and what that was like to go on tour and to play in front of lots and lots of people. And also, when Mark Knopfler asks, do you want to be in my band? There's only one answer to that. That's yeah. So that's what I did. You know?
Yeah.
That's been a wonderful association, and an immensely challenging one, and an immensly gratifying one as well. And I learned so much. You know, I've learned so much from that situation and from him at a time in my life when I've been around the block a bunch of times already. And, you know, of course you can always learn more, but I kind of thought I knew the ropes pretty well by then. And, man, I just learned so much from him. Great.
Now, a few years before your association with him, Weird Al did a parody of one of Mark's songs, and Mark actually played on Al's parody. Is that something you'd ever discussed with Mark?
No, only in to the extent that John was playing on it, that my brother was playing on that track. But I think both Mark and Guy Fletcher contributed mightily to that to Al's record.
Yeah.
But no, it's nothing we've really talked about much.
Back in 1979, Weird Al did a parody of Neil Diamond and Barbra Streisand's "You Don't Bring Me Flowers." His version was "You Don't Take Your Showers." It's an unreleased song by Weird Al. Have you ever heard of that song, or has Neil ever commented on it?
That you're aware of?
I remember the title now vaguely. That would have been, you know, only because John would have mentioned it.
Right.
But I don't think I've ever heard it.
Okay.
And whatever reason that remained unreleased, I don't know. One of two reasons: either Al didn't like the cut, or didn't think it was worthy of release, or you know, Neil and the other writers didn't grant him a license on it. You know, they didn't want it done. So I don't know which of that was the case, but
okay.
I think that would have been the two reasons.
On a personal side, you actually have released, as of this recording, 6 solo albums, including the first one in 2004 and the most recent one in 2018. What can you tell us about these solo records?
Yeah, you know, I never had any eyes to be an artist myself, and in fact, I was approached to do an album. God, this would have been maybe 25 years ago or something, and I declined to do it. I didn't want to do it. But let's see, how do I get into all of this? I don't know. You know, I've always along the way written the occasional instrumental, and I guess in 1999 had a pile of a little stack of instrumentals that I've written, you know, recently, and began thinking about, you know, that I should go in and record them and do demos on them with eyes to maybe getting some placement with the tunes in a movie or an advert or TV or something or another.
Oh yeah, okay.
And so that's what I did, and I did them. I did a handful of them really quickly, real bare bones, at a friend's studio, and we did 3 or 4 of them. And all of a sudden, you know, the engineer, my friend, and some of the guys who were playing on it, they kept saying, "Oh man, this is going to be a great album, great album." And I said, "Man, I'm not making an album. These are just demos and blah blah blah." And I continued to do a few more, and I don't know. At some point, 4 or 5 of them began hanging together in a certain way, and they had a sound and they had a direction. And at that point, I guess I allowed myself to think that I was making an album. At which point, then I seriously began writing for the rest of the album.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, I finished it up, and I shopped it, and I shopped it, and I shot it, and nobody wanted it. And so I just put it out myself, and it was the best thing I ever did, because I completely eliminated the middleman, and it was at a time when you could start putting things out yourself, and it wasn't considered a vanity project. All kinds of people were putting their own records out then. And it's just worked out to be the best thing I ever did, but mainly because I then went from not wanting to be an artist to that's all I ever want to do now. And awakened that in me. And I began seriously, taking my writing seriously and, putting an album out every 2 or 3 years. And I'm very proud of these records. They're not from a self-serving place or an egotistical way in any way whatsoever, but I just think it's taken all of, all of these years of playing on other people's records and playing all kinds of different styles and being as many things as you can be to as many people as you can be, and distilling it into who I am finally, and shaking hands with that and embracing that and really writing for that specifically. Plus, it's just a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And that's it. I can go back to all of these wonderful people who I've worked with and con them into writing my liner notes. Mark Knopfler and like that,
Very cool.
And, yeah. So anyway, I'm just in this COVID year. I've got an album that's nearly finished, but it's kind of parked and on hold because I'm just waiting to record one last song that I want to include in this album. And that was in March, and then everybody pulled their shingles in,
Right.
Including me.
Yeah.
So, hopefully at some point in the next few months, we can all get some vaccines in our arms, and I can get back to work and finish up this album and get it out in the spring or summer.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in the meantime, a couple of weeks ago, I had a lovely thing happen, and one of those early albums, Code Red Cloud 9, was re-released on vinyl on Yield Brother Records, which is a vinyl-only label.
Yeah, how cool.
Yeah, it's like a real gift. They did such a good job on it. 180 gram vinyl and really terrific packaging. It's the original packaging, but it's been expanded with some new photographs, and I wrote a little essay for it, as well as the original liner notes by Duane Eddy.
Very cool.
And it's very cool. It just sounds great. I'm really proud of it.
For collectors out there, you got to pick this up. Head over to yieldbrotherrecords.com to pick it up. And not only is there just the album, there's also, for just a few bucks more, a premium version of the album that comes with an actual signed 8x10 and some stickers. And how cool is that?
Yeah, it's very cool. Yeah, I personally we'll sign, to anybody who wants one of those, and then that comes along with the other stuff and with the album. But I'm very proud of it. It's music that's made to be heard on vinyl anyway.
Mm.
It's sort of it's kind of a jazz come bachelor pad lounge album,
Yeah.
and it just lives very well on vinyl. So anyway, that's exciting and going on, and apart from that, I'm doing a lot of practicing and writing and cooking and reading and working out and staying fit, and that was 2020.
Hey,
And
not so bad.
Same thing we're all doing. But anyway, here's to a brighter 2021 and vaccines and hopefully some less chaotic leadership situation.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I do have one more question actually I have two more questions about you and your brother, John. I guess my first one is, obviously, John has this amazing, incredible archive collection of Weird Al memorabilia, and it's really everything from his career, but also, he has a, vast music collection. He has a symbol collection. Do you have a collection of your own?
I do. Not of Al stuff per se, although I think I've got all of his albums. But I'm a terminal record collector, so I have really about 7,078s and
Whoa.
that I listen to all the time, and
Wow.
loads and loads of vinyl albums and 45s. And, I've succumbed. I guess I'm a guitar collector, although I didn't set out to be that. But after all those years, you just amass stuff. You find yourself with a collection.
Right.
So yeah, I'm afraid I collect records and guitars, and I have X amount of stuff over the years of Neil Diamond things that have just amounted up, over the years, and as well as Mark Knopfler stuff from tours and sweats and T-shirts and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But I don't think of myself as a collector, and I certainly don't think of myself as a hoarder in any way. Not that I'm accusing John of that, but he's very systematic about it,
Right.
And if you haven't had this conversation with him already, you should ask him about his cymbal collection and him sampling all of them and having like this online, well, not online, but he's got it all in his computer, each cymbal and what they sound like, and he can kind of go through stuff on his computer and then, pick out what he thinks he needs and go straight to it and pull it.
So incredible.
That's pretty staggering to me, That's pretty staggering. I have a certain system of filing records, but nothing that laser targeted,
Yeah. And my other question relating to your brother is, Dave and I and Al and so many people know him as Bermuda. Do you ever refer to him as Bermuda, or is he always John to you?
No, he's always John to me.
Yeah.
Bermuda came later, and that was, John was etched in my mind.
Right.
As opposed, I don't call him Bermuda, and he doesn't call me Bopcat. So
it's a good trade-off.
Trade-off. It's a win-win situation. Yeah.
Did you guys have any nicknames for each other as kids?
No, I don't think so. Except you or something like that, I don't remember that going on. But we talk every couple of 3 weeks and, email back and forth now and again. But, I just had a little exchange with him this morning, as a matter of fact.
That's great.
Yeah. But, man, it's really good talking with you guys.
This was great. This was so cool. Thank you so much for joining us and bringing us through your career. I mean, what an incredible career. You mentioned Discogs earlier. If you click on your name on Discogs, there's more than one page, and that's 500 to a page. So there's a lot to sift through, especially if someone decides to be a Richard Bennett collector. They are going to go broke because you've done so much. You've done such incredible work, and I highly recommend all 6 of your solo albums, which are available now. You can find them on Amazon, and as I mentioned, yieldbrotherrecords.com for that awesome vinyl re-release of Code Red Cloud 9. And we can also find out some information about you and get to all your socials by heading to richard-bennett.com. And cannot wait for that new album to come out, hopefully sometime this year, right?
Yes, I'm sure it'll be out sometime this year. If you go to the website richard-bennett.com, there's also, you can preview my albums there and listen to bits and pieces, and you can find out how to order stuff through there. And there's a discography there. That's very interesting. Something, I've never been, even though I go to Discogs and occasionally buy stuff through them, I've never looked myself up on there.
You should.
I'm going to go do that. Now, in fairness, I have to say there's another Richard Bennett guitar player who's an acoustic guitar player, sort of in the new acoustic and bluegrass music world. And he and I, of course, get jumbled up together, understandably. And then there's Richard Rodney Bennett that gets tangled up in there as well. I'm going to go to Discogs and narcissistic look at my discography there and see what's going on.
I feel like if I was on Discogs, I would be refreshing my page every day, even though I'm not releasing new stuff. I would still just be so curious.
Yeah, well, that might be a good place to go find some of these albums that I played on that I don't have copies of. I never was really good back in the old days in L.A. anyway on all that stuff I played on. A lot of it just I never bought or never got copies of. So I don't know. As I've gotten older, I've tried to, find things that I don't have that I've played on, but it's not necessarily a mission or anything. But
yeah.
I don't know. Those things like those Andy Williams and Johnny Mathis records, I'd love to have.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Again, Richard, this has just been really remarkable having you on the show. So really appreciate you coming on and gifting John that drum set and bringing him to the Dr. Demento show that fateful day.
Well, Ethan and Dave, thanks. I'm flattered to be on, and anytime, if there's stuff we haven't covered, give us a ring.
Thank you, Richard. What a fun interview. Be sure to head on over to richard-bennett.com for information about Richard and to sample all of his albums.
I was so excited. This week, I just received my vinyl copy of Richard's album Code Red Cloud 9, along with an autographed headshot and stickers. It's really beautiful. You got to check it out. Grab your copy at yieldbrotherrecords.com.
Now, once our listeners got past the fact that Richard and Bermuda were brothers, a few of them were asking us, wait, if they're brothers, why do they have different names?
Well, now, first of all, typically siblings are given different names. I personally don't find it weird that, one brother is named Richard and the other is named John.
Well, the fans asked, so we decided to reach out to Bermuda for the full answer. First, we asked Bermuda if he or his brother used a stage name.
And the answer is yes.
So with that news, we just had to find out a little bit more. We then asked Bermuda what his birth name was.
And he said it was Jonathan.
Aha, mystery solved.
We hope that clears things up.
This week's episode is brought to you in part by Discover Darwin, promoting tourism in Darwin, Minnesota. Not only is historic Darwin, Minnesota beautiful, it's also leathery.
Darwin, Minnesota is home to Darwin MC.
MC? Like Master of Ceremonies? The person who runs an open mic?
Nope.
MC Hammer?
Nope.
MC Lars?
Nope.
1,100 in Roman numerals?
Nope.
Someone who misspelled the shorthand for centimeters?
Nope.
All right, I give up.
Darwin MC stands for Darwin Motorcycle Club.
Whoa, like the Sons of Anarchy or Mayans MC from TV?
I have to assume Darwin MC is exactly like Sons of Anarchy or Mayans MC from TV.
Wow, so do you think they run drugs?
No, they...
Or do you think they run guns?
No, actually they...
Money laundering, it's gotta be money laundering.
No, actually they just fix motorcycles.
Well, I bet they still do some crazy stuff.
Like what?
Well, let's just say I wouldn't be surprised if they were smuggling in twine for the ball.
So visit Darwin, Minnesota on your next expedition. Discover Darwin, more than just the twine ball. And after you visit Darwin, Minnesota, be sure to visit discoverdarwin.biz.
Each week, we are able to bring you this podcast absolutely free thanks to sponsors like Brito, Angel Valenzuela and his son David Cash, Discover Darwin, Jackson Scoggins, and all of our amazing close personal friend Patreon supporters, Jared, Zeb, Blair, Allison, Javier, and Kenneth. Our newest Patreon supporter, Aaron, and so many more.
Revenue from our incredible supporters on patreon.com/2000inch allows us to continue doing what we love, which is making fantastically fun, funny, and family-friendly Weird Al podcasts for you each and every week. We'd absolutely appreciate your consideration in joining our pretty stinking majestic Patreon family for as little as $1 per month.
Looking for another way to support the podcast? Head over to shop.2000inch.com for official Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast t-shirts, tote bags, mugs, tank tops, face coverings, pillows, and so much more. Our Patreon supporter, Mike Minnick, just received his free t-shirt that he won on our Patreon page for being the first person to correctly guess Richard Bopcat Bennett as our guest on last week's episode and this week's episode. Mike posted a fun 3D photo wearing his reverse logo t-shirt over on our Facebook group. Enjoy your shirt, Mike, and thank you for your support of this podcast.
You can find us online at WeirdOwlPodcast.com or 2000inch.com, where you can get information about our guests and listen to past episodes, like episode 92-inch. You know, last week's episode, the one with the first half of our interview with Richard Bennett. Please join our Facebook group by heading to group.2000inch.com for episode discussions and other exclusive content. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram via @2000inch and at youtube.2000inch.com. Be sure to share our posts and tell your friends to Gill and Chill.
We love it when you leave us voicemail on our 27-hour-a-day podcast hotline, 347-SPATULA. You might even hear your message on the air. You can catch our show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or the podcast app of your choice. Whichever you choose, be sure to hit that subscribe button so that you do not miss any episodes. New episodes drop every Wednesday.
We will soon begin airing our series of bonus episodes where we sit down with Richard Bennett's brother, John Bermuda Schwartz, and go page by page, picture by picture, inch by inch, centimeter by centimeter, MC by MC through his brand new book, Black and White and Weird All Over. Time is running out for you to grab the book if you want to be able to follow along with those episodes. Plus, it's a great gift to give someone for Chinese New Year or President's Day, or better yet, Al and Suzanne Yankovic's 20th wedding anniversary.
What about Valentine's Day? It would make a good gift for Valentine's Day, wouldn't it?
I suppose. Don't you think that's kind of a stretch, though?
You're right. The traditional Valentine's Day gift is a spatula, after all. Well, thank you once again to Richard Bennett, John Bermuda Schwartz, Jason Alchill, Joe Jaffa, Chris Sear, Mike Minnick, Jim Kimo West for our incredible theme song, and thanks to all of our listeners, subscribers, Patreon supporters, and sponsors, and everyone else who makes this episode and podcast possible.
Stay tuned to Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast for more amazing episodes coming soon, including our special episode 100-inch with Joel Miller.
I cannot wait. Just 6 more episodes. March 31st. Mark your calendar.
That was Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast, episode 93-inch. You won't believe where Jason Alchill goes on his next vacation.
Everything Jason Alchill does is fascinating.
I don't call him Bermuda, and he doesn't call me Bobcat, so it's a win-win situation.